Hi everybody, it's Michael again from Michael Hellig Interiors, and I would like to thank you so much for stopping by to see me today for this video. I'd like to talk to people who are returning guests. Thank you so much for coming back to see me. If you are familiar with me, thanks again for stopping by. If you're brand new, I'll tell you a little bit about what I do. I'm an interior designer and I specialize in small, tricky, or awkward spaces, and I help frustrated homeowners take care of all of the things that are small, tricky, and awkward in their homes. So this particular video is about a square living room with 3 doorways on 3 different walls and a pass-through to the kitchen, which is very, very tricky in a space that is meant to be a family room for lots of different activities. And so today we're going to get through all of the different things that I can help this client with. And it's a case study video and blog post for you. So if you like to kind of explore things like that, then this is going to be the video for you. And thanks again. We're going to get right into it. So I'm going to get now over to my computer and I'm going to share my screen so we can kind of talk about the things leading up to this case study and also what kind of goes into the design process from my perspective and how I can help people overcome different rooms that are challenging. So I'll be right back and we'll share my screen with you in a second. All right, so here I am in my screen for you today. Now, as many of you probably know, I really like working in PowerPoint, so that's what I'm in today. I kind of like to kind of organize my thoughts in PowerPoint, and it really helps me to stay kind of on focus on different things and stuff like that. So, having said that, we're going to jump right into what we're going to be doing with this space. And so, for example, this is, as I said before, a case study of a living room that has 3 different doorways. And we're calling the video How to Arrange a Square Living Room with 3 Doors on 3 Walls with a Pass-Through. I'm probably going to edit that a little bit, maybe take one of the 3s out. But anyway, you get the idea. So that's one of those tricky rooms that is going to take a little bit of doing to kind of get to a space that it can be conducive for family events and different things that they want to do. So we're going to talk about the goals for this particular space. So one, we have a clarify how to lay out the room without obstructing the pathways. So because you have 3 different doorways on 3 different walls, you've got a lot of different places where you can walk in and through the room. So you don't want to obstruct any of those doorways if you can, if at all possible. They need space to serve multiple functions, one being entertaining, dining, exercise, games, and places for toys, to play with toys and stuff like that. They also want to brighten the space because it's too dark. Now, this is a north-facing room, so it does have not a whole lot of natural light during the day, so it tends to get a little bit darker. So you can see that there's kind of like a darker wall color. We might have to address that. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. They do have French doors. Over here, you can kind of see the French doors. So the French doors open into the room, and then that makes putting furniture in the space tricky because you don't want to block those French doors. You know, if they're opening into the room, chances are they're going to hit something on either side. So you really want to be careful of how you arrange furniture because of that. And 3 doors on 4 of the walls plus a kitchen pass-through. That's the 4th or the final bullet point that I have here for the goals. So how to achieve all of this and still have open pathways. So that's going to be tricky. Let's get into what the room looks like. So I like to kind of start off with telling people that the first thing that they need to do for me if they're going to work with me through eDesign is to measure their room for me. So what they do is they usually do like a bird's eye view floor plan, little sketch of the room, and then they do all of the different attributes that are in the room. So the doorways, the windows, and everything else like that are all kind of put into this little sketch. And it's like you're looking down at it from above. And that's kind of the easiest way to talk about what the room sketch is. Whoops, my dog's barking. I don't know if you can hear that on my video, but she's decided to bark. Let's not do that. So then when you do measure the room, you're going to measure the length and the depth of the room. So basically you're going to measure the long walls in this space and not anything else yet. So you just want to kind of get an overall dimension of the room. So how I figured out how this room was more of a square type room is because we have 190 inches, which is 15 feet 8 inches going in this direction here, and you have 176 inches, which is 14 feet 7 inches going in this direction here. So that is just about a foot shy of a square room, which for all intents and purposes, it's pretty much a square room. So what makes square rooms a little bit trickier to lay out than, say, a rectangular room is that you usually don't have a very, very long wall. So for example, within a rectangular room, you usually have a long wall where you can place furniture and then have, you know, the viewpoint across from that long wall. If it's like your entertainment center or a fireplace or what have you, that would be the focal point in the room. So with a square room, it's a little bit trickier because you don't really have that long wall. So you kind of have to deal with a shorter wall, which is your long wall. And then in this case, because we have a pass through going through this wall, and then you have a doorway over here, the wall that you would be looking at, say for example, if this is your long wall that you're going to put your seating group on, the wall that you're looking at across from that is not a long wall either. So you have this pass through, not a pass through, but it's a doorway going into a hallway, pass through going into a kitchen, and then you have a large doorway over here. So you have a couple of windows on this wall over here, and you have your French doors. So here's your doors. You have big doors over here that open up into the space. You have a doorway over here on a perpendicular wall, and then opposite the French doors, you have another doorway going into another part of the house. And then you have this pass through, which is technically a doorway, but it's not quite because you really can't put anything in front of this passway if you want it to be, or pass through, if you want it to be sort of like a useful, attribute for the room. So there's that. What you want to do after you measure the length and the width of the room is that you want to go back and you want to measure all of the different segments of the wall so that you know what all the little pieces are. So for example, with this wall here, because you have so many sections of wall and windows and then doorways and then another section of wall and then some windows and another section of wall, you want to get the full length of this wall in all those little parts, because you might have some artwork that you're going to put on the wall. You might have some window treatments that you want to like put on the wall so that you know how much space you have on either side of the windows for the window treatments. Things like that are important for, kind of understanding why and how much space you have in that space over here. Then you have the shorter wall, which is opposite your long wall over here. So this is the only unobstructed wall in the room, opposite probably your focal point wall, which we're not 100% sure yet because we haven't designed yet, but you have to know that you have 136 inches on this wall, so that you're out shopping for furniture, for example, you can't get something that's 140 inches because it's going to, block this doorway over here. You can't get something that's 150 inches because it's going to block this doorway over here. You can't get something that's super deep, like 20 or 30 inches, because if we go out 20 or 30 inches, you're going to be blocking this window, especially if it's a tall piece that's going to be kind of positioned on this wall here. So you kind of be mindful of all those things. And again, that's why you have all of these measurements that are on this wall over here and all the other walls that are in this space too. So you basically know how much space you have to work with different things. So then you know also that you have a 40-inch doorway, which is pretty generous. And then you have an 82-inch doorway over here, which is very generous. So for example, in this particular iteration, I'm going to say that it's not a terrible idea to put furniture on this wall, because even if it does kind of pop off over into this space over here, this walkway, theoretic walkway, you still have room to kind of get into the space. So for example, if you have a sofa that's about 40 inches deep, for example, and it pops off the wall 40 inches, as long as it isn't 176 inches long, which probably it won't be, you're going to be okay, because you're going to have the space to walk into the room before you would kind of hit the corner of that sofa, if that makes any sense. So having furniture kind of maybe centered on this wall a little bit more, and then maybe utilizing some furniture space over here, maybe some end tables over here, as long as they're not 40 inches deep, we're going to be okay, because you're going to have plenty of space to walk into the room. Okay. So the other thing that I want to talk about is this wall here can't have a whole lot of decor on it, or a lot of pieces like a credenza or some kind of like a cabinet or something that you might want to put underneath this pass through, because it's not going to be very functional, and it's also going to block this doorway. If the doorway was kind of popped off up here a little bit more, I would say you could probably do something and put a little cabinet or something there. But because the doorway is really pretty much right into the corner over here, as it is over here in this corner, you got to be really mindful of those two things, and you don't want to put a piece of furniture here that's going to block your pathway through the room, if that makes any sense. All right, so now we're going to talk about my tips for the room. So this client sent me a really lot of pictures, which is wonderful, because I was able to kind of really look at the room from multiple different angles, and this really helped me out a lot, because I could kind of see where some of the issues what they were having trouble with were, and how I might be able to address some of those issues too. So that's always going to be a good thing. And I'm calling this section tips. So what I'm going to say for the first tip here is to remove the clutter from the floor in front of the kitchen pass through so that your walkway is clear. And that is important, because you really can't have, as I was saying just a minute ago, anything that's going to be blocking this walkway here, because we're really going to need to put the rest of the room to work. And that means that we're going to need as much clear space between these walkways as possible, because that's going to be the least obstructed way through the room. Okay, so we're going to go on to tip number 2 now, and that is, my client really likes this green accent wall over here. But I have an issue with accent walls, and I'm just going to touch on that just for a quick second, because I don't want to harp on it, but I want to kind of like bring it to your attention so that you kind of think about accent walls a little bit differently. Accent walls are great if you're looking at them. So, for example, I prefer to call an accent wall a focal wall, because it would be something that you would be looking at as opposed to something that would be behind you. So the back, your back is to this wall here, and that's kind of what I said in this next sentence down here. So you really can't see that accent wall very much. So instead of having this accent wall back here, I say paint this wall out the same color as the other 3 walls, and instead pick the accent wall where the focal point in the room is going to be. Okay, so we're going to go on to this next tip now, and that is the furniture that is on that accent wall is sort of like pushed all the way into the corner. So this is really not the greatest way to arrange this room, and I understand why they did it, because they have, some stuff that is hanging from the ceiling here. This is like a silk rope that their kids do sort of gymnastics and stuff on, and I understand that that is kind of a part of the room. But if you're going to be kind of thinking about how you want this room to function, I think you really need to you need to focus on how you want the room to serve the purposes that you want it to serve. And those are the most important purposes that you want it to serve. So, for example, if you want the room to be primarily an entertaining space, where you have sofa across from an entertainment center with a TV and storage and things like that, then that is the priority for the room. If you want the room to primarily be a dining room, then the priority for the room needs to be a dining room. You can do lots of different things with different spaces, and as I'm going to show you here with this particular design, I did do that. But I think that really what you want to do is focus on the maybe top 2 most important things that you want to accomplish in the room. So, for example, this room, we're going to really focus on it being the entertainment space, where you have sofa chair so that you have a space to sit down and watch TV, you have a space to sit and read a book, you have a space to sit and visit with friends that come over, and that's going to be across from a entertainment space. Then you're also going to have a dining space in this room as well, so that you really can't have a whole lot of other things going on. So dangling from the ceiling, although it seems like a really cool thing to do and something that I would be totally down with if I was like 50 years younger, I would totally be into that. But if you're going to do that, you might want to maybe find a different space for that particular activity in the room, so that you can kind of focus on the more important things like entertaining, dining space, and having space for having friends over to visit and things like that. So enough said about that. But also getting back to this particular slide here, having all this furniture stuffed into the corner, not a good idea. We want to bring it more into the room, and it's okay if we obstruct this doorway a little bit, because as I said, it's an 82-inch door, so we have lots and lots of room to play around with. So I wouldn't be too concerned about centering furniture on this wall, for example. Let's go on to the next slide here. So we have the tip here is about scale of furniture and the shape of the pieces that we can talk about here. So, for example, the scale of the furniture, this sofa looks like maybe a 2-seater sofa, maybe a love seat style sofa. It's quite small. I think that if you want to be able to entertain and have the family in and have friends in, you really need to kind of focus on getting a larger sofa. So we're going to do that. And then this chair over here, I think it could be a bigger chair too. So something that would be a secondary seating in this particular area for reading, for putting your feet up and things like that and relaxing. I think that that's going to be a better situation than doing something smaller as an accent chair. We're going to bring in a secondary piece of furniture that's going to serve a comfort feature in the room. And then we're going to talk also about the shape of the coffee table here. So we have a rectangular shaped coffee table. I'm going to tell you that in awkward rooms, whether they're small, whether they're tricky to lay out, any kind of awkwardness in the room, you want to really be mindful of the shape of the furniture that you have in the space. So because this is a square room, and that pretty much every inch of the space is going to count for getting in and out of the space comfortably and through the space comfortably, you really want to concentrate on more rounded furniture. So for example, a round or oval shaped coffee table, round accent tables that are going to be maybe next to the sofa. You're going to want to have maybe a round dining table, because round is just easier to get around in a space, and it's just a lot less angles to kind of navigate around, if that makes any sense for you. So let's go on to the next tip here. And here we have the focal point of the room. So I didn't change the layout of the room. We're still focusing on this as the focal point in the room. But what I want to say is this is the room, this is the space that you're going to look at most often. So from my point of view, this is the more appropriate accent wall. So this is the wall that you want to use as your focal wall that you're going to be looking at. So if you're going to have that dark green, I say transfer that dark green over to this wall as opposed to the wall that's behind the seating group, because this way you can enjoy the color of that wall. I also say go lighter on the other walls because this is a north facing room, because it's not a naturally well lit room, you're going to want to kind of capitalize on as much lightness as possible. And so painting the walls that are not the focal wall a lighter color is really going to achieve that for you. Also, we're going to ruthlessly edit the stuff in the space. So this is probably one of the very first things that I tell clients to do when they send me pictures, is because you have to kind of pare back on things. I know everybody wants all their stuff and they want, lots of different options to do things. But if you have puzzles that are missing pieces, if you have toys that are broken, if you have decor that is cracked, broken, or chipped up or whatever, it's time to edit that stuff out. It's time to make it go away so that you can kind of pare back a little bit on what you really, really need in the room, as opposed to having everything in the room. And you might be able to find different places in the house, maybe a different storage cabinet that might be right through this room, maybe behind this wall, where you can put a lot of different things that you don't need every single day. So I say that the things that you want to keep in the space are the things that you use every single day. So if you go and you put puzzles together all the time, you want to prioritize that as a space to keep those puzzles in the room. On the flip side, if you have toys that the kids haven't played with in 6 months or a year, you might want to sit them down and have that tough conversation about maybe it's time to get rid of the toys, maybe donate them to somebody else who needs them, or find a different place in the house for storing those toys so that they're not taking up family space, because this is the space now for everybody, not just the space for one or two people in the house. So that's one of the things that you can talk about for ruthlessly editing things. Okay, next tip is the French doors. The wall height is a little bit off-putting because you have the door and the windows that are all in a straight line this way, and then you have your taller cabinet over here with lots of stuff on top of it. So if this stuff is going to stay for some reason, you need to balance that out with something up here. And so what I had thought of doing was putting a curtain rod that goes all the way across the room. That's at a pretty generous height. So you want to come down maybe 6 or 8 inches from the top of the ceiling so that you have a nice crisp line that goes all the way across. I say just do one big rod that goes across the entire window and the doors too. And then you're going to want to treat the windows with panels on either side of those. And then, you'll have enough maybe volume for the curtains to open and close. So for example, if you want privacy at night, I'm not sure exactly, this is the backyard, but if you have neighbors and things like that, you do want to have the opportunity to close the windows and the doors off. You might want to have like a traverse rod that's going to be able to close those windows off and have those curtains kind of close all the way through, so that you have one pretty much solid wall of curtains at night. And then you can open them back up in the daytime so that you have all the light and things like that you want and need in the room. All right. So having thought through all of that, I want to talk to you about the zone. So a lot of times what I'll do with my room designs is I will zone them out, meaning that if my client is sending me the different goals for the space and they include different functions for the room, you're going to need to kind of address all of those things. So basically what I did here was I color coordinated my zones. So the first zone here is the entertainment zone, and that is this whole wall, this 176-inch wall here, and that is going to give you a nice amount of space to put a large cabinet. Now again, it's not coming out too far in front of this window, and you have lots of opportunity to find something that's going to be tall and maybe not quite as wide as this, but you can go as wide as this if you want to. I think that it would be totally fine to do, especially if you have balance on the other side of the room to kind of balance that out. So this is going to give the opportunity for lots and lots of storage. And I say that you want to have open storage, you want to have a combination of open storage and closed storage, and a spot for the TV and things like that that are going to be in the center. The next zone I have on here is the table zone. So you want to have a table, I think preferably next to where the kitchen pass-through is, because if you're going to have dinners and things like that in this space, being able to pass through plates and things like that and entrees and whatnot to be put onto the table through the kitchen window, doorway, pass through there is going to be ideal. So having it kind of close to this space is important, but you also want to be mindful of that space that you're going to have to walk through. Now, you need to have about 3 feet of space to walk into a room without, walking into the side of something. So you got your 3 feet of space here. You definitely have your 3 feet of space over here. Then you have probably about a good 3 feet of space between this wall where the pass through is and where the table and chairs are going to be. Now, as you can see, I kind of was very conservative when it came to the space that I'm going to allot for the table and chairs. And that is because I don't want it to take up a whole lot of space. I want the option to be, a good place to have meals and to maybe do some homework and to do some craft projects and things like that. But I don't want it to be like the big, huge focal point of the room. It's going to be the secondary kind of like function of the room. The main function kind of worked out to be entertainment and, seating area over here for visitors and the family to hang out. So you don't want to obstruct this pathway. So as you can see, there's a clear path that goes all the way through here, a clear path that goes all the way through here, and you really do have a pretty clear shot through the room, to kind of get over here. So zone number 3 is your lounging zone. So this is where your sofa and your chair and your coffee table and maybe end tables and things like that are going to be. This is really where you're going to be kind of sitting down to enjoy this focal point over here. The last zone I left sort of open, and that is a kind of bonus zone, and that would be a space for exercising. It would be a space for maybe playing with toys on the floor. It would be a space for, doing yoga and things like that. So this space is pretty much open. And if you do have any kind of coffee table, whatever, you can move it back toward the seating area over here to kind of really have a nice amount of space. So that is what I came up with for the idea for this floor plan. And the next part of the video is going to be me walking you through the actual design that I came up with so that you can kind of see how all of these ideas were kind of put to the test and if things had to be left out or if things have to be changed around. I don't know yet because I haven't designed it. So we're going to get back with that in a second, and hold on tight. We'll be right back with that. Okay, so now we're in the floor plan software that I use for my eDesign projects, and I put the layout together that I think is going to work the best for this particular space, and I'm going to walk you through it now with what I came up with and sort of like my design rationale and all of the other things that I think are important to understand about this space. So first off, we are looking at this room from this perspective over here, which is that larger doorway. I think this is the 82-inch doorway over here. And so when you're walking into this space, what you're having to kind of contend with right away is that seating arrangement that you're going to have for the lounging area that we had back in the previous segment of the video. So this lounging area is quite generous. So it's got a nice couch, a nice 3-seater couch. It's got a recliner kind of over in the corner, in the, sort of next to the window over here, and a couple of end tables with a few lamps on it. And then there's also some wall decor above, which we'll see in the 3-dimensional here in a second. The way that this works is because when you're walking into this space, you're not walking right into the side of something. You've got about 3 feet of space before you would encounter the side of the sofa. And the nice thing about that is that you have a nice little round table over here that's going to allow you to have a place to put a beverage down, to have a nice place to put a lamp down and things like that, but you're not walking right into the side of the couch. The nice thing about this doorway is that it's very large. So when you have a very large doorway like this, you can really kind of walk into the space this way, and you're not going to encounter anything until your steps into the room. And the thing that you're going to encounter first is the oval-shaped cocktail table. The reason why I chose an oval shape is because no edges. So like the previous cocktail table that they have in there now, you have that rectangular shape and you've got those hard corners that you have to navigate around. Something like this is going to be easier to walk around. So for awkward spaces, for small spaces, for tricky spaces, keep those kind of things in mind. You want to concentrate on the shapes of your furniture. So this shape works great in a lot of different size rooms. It works excellent in this type of a room here because you're walking around something something that has those curved edges and you're not walking right into the side of something. Makes it nice and easy to kind of walk around here. This is a light fixture that I changed out. Instead of having the ceiling fan with the lights in it, I decided to do something a little bit different. So I brought in a chandelier style light that kind of gives you a visual, I guess, definition for the two spaces. So you have your dining and entertainment space on the one side, then you have your lounging space on the other side of this dividing point. It's kind of like a visual barrier in the room, but it isn't anything that's going to be in the way or anything like that. So it's just a nice little accent in the space. I defined the lounge area with an 8 by 10 rug. I find that a lot of times, no matter what size room you have, an 8 by 10 rug is going to work really well because it's big enough to have a 3-seat sofa on it, and it's big enough to have a chair or two, maybe even a love seat, depending on your ability to lay out the room. For this particular space, again, you have that chair that's sort of off the side of the 8 by 10 rug. So the two front legs are on the rug, the two back legs are off the rug, and all of the sofa is on the rug. Now the rug is also positioned closer to the lounge area, basically right underneath the lounge area. And I did that on purpose because I didn't want anything that's going to be coming out too far into the room, and I didn't want anything that's going to kind of get in the way of this area over here, which is going to be your activities area, the exercise area, that bonus space that we talked about in the first video. That's over here. So as we walk in the room this way, you have a clear pathway right straight through to this doorway over here. Nothing's obstructing this wall. Nothing's in front of that pass-through wall because it's just not practical to have anything in front of that pass-through wall. No kind of bar stools. You don't want to have anything overhanging. You just want to have a nice clear shot right through the room. And that's because I have this zone over here, which is the dining zone. It has a round table. It has 4 armless chairs that are able to be pushed right underneath the table. And that is going to really give you a nice amount of space to be able to walk around in front of it this way. And you can kind of scoot back this way too. Now, remember this entertainment zone over here. So the thing I did with this entertainment zone was I did a larger credenza in the center, and then I flanked it with 2 book style shelves that have a little bit of closed storage, a little bit of open storage kind of on the sides of it. The nice thing about this is that it doesn't pop off the wall too far, and that kind of gives you the illusion as you're looking at it from above of a break front cabinet. And like a break front cabinet means that you have something that's a little bit wider in the center and it kind of tapers back on the end. So these 2 bookshelves are shorter, less deep than the centerpiece in the middle. And that gives you a nice kind of frame for your entertainment space, which is the television in the front here. And it's also not obstructing this window. Now, I did put a chair in front of the window over here because I like the idea of having a few different pieces of furniture in this space. Now, this could be moved over here if you needed to for a time being. Say, for example, you're having a get-together and you really just want to kind of focus on a conversation. You can move this chair like over here. You can move the chair over this way. This table isn't so big that it couldn't be moved easily over to this side if you wanted to bring this chair over this way for a time being, for example. So the room is kind of multifunctional and a little bit easier to move around that way too. But I wanted something a little bit kind of comfortable over in this corner with a reading lamp behind it, and a drink table, just to have a little moment so that it's not right in with the lounge area, but it could be something that would be comfortable to read by, the light of the day, or the reading lamp that's behind it. So let's get back to talking about this round table. This table is also a pedestal table, which let's show you what this all looks like in 3 dimensions so you can kind of see what I did with this space. And it will make a little bit more sense if we look at it in 3 dimensions. So we're going to scoot around this way. We'll look at that dining table for a quick second, just to kind of zone in on it for a minute here. As you can see, it's a pedestal style table. So it's kind of got like a hairpin leg sort of leg underneath, but the legs are centered in the middle of the table. What that does is it doesn't have those legs that are going to be coming all the way out on the ends of the table, the sides of the table, which would obstruct your chairs more. They're more so focused in the middle so that all of your chairs can now go into those recesses and kind of get tucked away inside of there. So let me kind of zoom in so you can kind of see that. So there's a hairpin leg, and this chair are sort of in between those hairpin legs in between that pedestal style looking leg that's underneath the table there. Two things about this: you want to have chairs that don't have arms on them. So no arms on the chairs. That way you can push them all the way into the table. That's just going to free up that space when you're not using them to move comfortably around this seating area. And round is another thing, because we were talking about the rounded edges of the oval cocktail table a second ago. This round table does the same thing. It gives you the ability to gracefully move around it. There's no hard corners to navigate. You're not checking your hip against something as you're walking through the room. It just gives you a nice amount of space to sit 4 people comfortably. If you wanted to get a table that expands, to put a leaf in it to make it like an oval shaped table, do that. Have another couple of chairs off of the site for every day. And then when you have company coming over, you have a larger group of people that you want to entertain, you can open that table up. Leaves and tables are a great thing for tricky and small and awkward rooms. Let's talk about the durability of the furniture that you're going to have in the space. So instead of doing like a glass top table, I did a stone top cocktail table over here. Durable for family use. Put your feet up on it, color on it. It can get banged around a little bit. It's not like wood that could get scratched. It's not like glass that could get broken. It's something that's a little bit more substantial. I saved the wood for the end tables. Again, they're round so that they're not terribly right in the way when you're walking into the space. They're round, they're nice, that you can navigate by them. They're just big enough to put a table lamp on and have a little extra space for a cup of coffee, a glass of wine. And then there's also that nice little shelf on the bottom where you can put decor down there or store some books and things like that. You don't want to overpower the room. With my dog is playing in the corner over here. If you hear her, that's what she's doing. She's entertaining herself because she's bored with me talking. That's a story for another day. Getting back to the presentation here. So the round tables will give you a little bit of space to put a lot of things like decor and books and things like that. But again, you don't want to overpower the space with a lot of stuff. You want to edit things back and kind of like keep your stuff to a minimum if you can. So the arms of this chair over here in the corner are great because you can see through the space. It's not such a heavy piece of furniture, but it does have the arms on it so that it's a nice, comfortable accent chair that's going to go over into the corner. And again, here we go. This is the accent wall now moved from behind the sofa to where the accent in the room should be, which is the focal wall. So that gives you something nice to look at. It gives you something to enjoy that brings you to the focus of the room, which is your entertainment space that is across from the seating space. So what I did was I brought up some nice art kind of high on the wall over here because the shelves on either side of this credenza piece were not terribly tall. So I wanted something that gives you a little bit of balance. And it also gave me the opportunity to bring a couple of sconces in that will flank the art, give you a little bit of light, a little bit of accent light on that wall too. So it's not having to have all the lights on all the time. Maybe when you're watching a movie, you can just have those 2 small sconces on, just give you enough kind of ambient light in the space to make it comfortable. Now these can be plug-in, they can be hardwired into the space depending on what you want to do. So that's a nice thing to do. So in order to balance out the height of this art over here and the height of the wall, I brought in a single curtain rod that brought it all the way across. And then I just added some decorative panels for some curtains. Now these can be on a traverse rod if you wanted, as I was saying before, where all of the curtains can close. And so, you'll have the ability to have some privacy at night if you wanted to, but for everyday purposes, they could be just the decor, the decorative panels that are giving you a little bit of softness on the wall here. And if you look at this wall now over here, which is your entertainment lounging space, I just did some nice colorful art that sort of brings in the color of the area rug, brought in some blues that are opposite on the color wheel from the oranges. So I wanted to kind of bring in, some vibrant colors because this is a younger family. This family has younger kids. So some vibrant colors, some colorful art and things like that, I think are important to have in the room. Hence the pillows, the lamps, and also the nice kind of color blocked rug here. And then that really pretty sort of herringbone green wallpaper that is on the focal wall now. I kept all the other walls very neutral so that you have sort of like this off-white, this creamy light beige, grayish. I can't really tell exactly what the color is on the render here, but it's a very kind of light color that's going to bring in some lightness to the space. Instead of having the dark colors in a dark room, let's lighten it up And the other thing is I wanted to keep as much for the daylight of these windows open as possible. So I didn't put any blinds or shades or anything else on the windows or the doors, just to give you that opportunity to bring in as much light as possible. She's playing an instrument now. So there's that there. I like to put a mirror sometimes either opposite a natural light source or on a perpendicular wall to bounce some light around. So this is opposite those windows. It's going to bring some light over onto this space. I kept this wall very, very minimal on purpose because it's not really a focal wall. It's sort of just a pathway through the space. And I wanted to keep it so that it was not a, there wasn't a whole lot going on over there. I didn't want people to kind of linger in this space because it is a pathway, if that makes any sense. So that's kind of why I did it that way. But as you can see, it's a nice balance to the space. It has a lot of, let's back it up a little bit this way. It has a lot of flow to it. There's nothing obstructing those pathways through the room. That pathway is quite open. It's got a nice amount of balance. There's some good storage here. And if you wanted to bring in more storage, you might want to do some end tables that have maybe some drawers or things like that. I would still probably stick with a round or maybe a chair side table, which is very narrow, something that wouldn't come out any further than the sofa arm itself. So I think that would be a nice thing to do too. But this is how I designed the room. This is the way that the space looks. And I think that it turned out really nicely. You'll have to give me some comments below to tell me what you think. I'm going to also insert some pictures to kind of show you the renders of the space, so the photorealistic things that are going on in the space, and to kind of show you the different angles of the room, to show you kind of like how things would look in person if this was an actual room, if the clients decided to move forward with this particular design, how it would look in the space. And those are going to be the purpose for those renders that I'm going to kind of superimpose on the screen here. And then I think that that's a good way to do it. So we'll go back to the 2D to kind of give you one more look of the layout of the space. So again, here are our zones: our entertainment zone, we have the lounge zone, we have the dining zone, and then we do have that nice bit of real estate right here, which would be the exercise or bonus zone for the space. So 4 zones in a square room. I think it turned out great. You have to let me know what you think. Well, so there you have it. If you want to design a square room, you got to really kind of think about what you want to do with the space. Think about how you want to use the space in terms of functionality. So for example, with this particular client, they wanted to use the room for dining, they wanted to use the room for entertaining, they wanted to use the room for some exercise. So those are the 3 main points that we were kind of going to touch on today. So when you're going about designing your own room, that's what you really want to do, is you really want to kind of figure out what your main purposes are for the space and to really go with that. But above all and beyond all, what you really want to do is know how much space you have. So I can't stress enough how important it is to measure your room and to do it kind of like I showed you in the video, where you do a bird's eye view floor plan of the space. You kind of draw out exactly what the shape of the room looks like if you're looking down on it from above, and then you're going to measure out the overall length and width of the room, and then you're going to measure out every wall segment in between doorways and windows and everything else in order to get that that cross section of measurements that you need for knowing what your furniture is going to be in the room and things like that. So when you're out furniture shopping, if you only have like 60 inches of space, you know you can't get a 72-inch sofa, for example. So that's really what the important part of that is. So those are really what you want to do when you come to designing a room that has multiple doorways and it has obstructions in different places, like the doorways and also the pass-through window into the kitchen and the French doors that kind of pop out into the room as well. So you really want to be able to be mindful of where you're going to put the furniture. So you're going to know that you have to have at least about 3 feet of space or thereabouts in order to walk comfortably into the room. You don't want your, the arm of your sofa to be right in the doorway. You want to be able to have some grace when you're coming into the room. Same thing with your pass-throughs. Like for this room, you have your perpendicular doorway and your other doorway into the hallway. You don't want anything that's going to obstruct that pathway through to both of those spaces. So those are the things that you really want to keep in mind for designing a square-shaped room.
And I'd love to know what you think of this video. So if you want to leave me some comments below and tell me about if you would do this room a little bit differently, if you thought that there might have been room to float the furniture, for example. Um, I kind of, thought about that after a couple of ways, and then I thought, well, it's just not going to work. So that's why I kind of went with the design that I came up with, which is similar to what they have, with a few tweaks here and there. So tell me about the focal wall. Would you do something like that in your house too, to see if you wanted to have like something to look at that's nice behind your entertainment space? And tell me all about what you think of the room. I'd love to hear about it. And until next time, thank you very much for stopping by, and I will see you again soon. Take care.